So there's a spell in Dungeons & Dragons that you can get at level 1 that can absolutely decimate the world of your campaign. And that spell? Disguise Self. There's this scene in Full Metal Alchemist where a civil war is triggered because soldiers from the central government shoot and kill an Ishvalan child. Though it's in the rearview mirror of the main story of Full Metal, the war has far-reaching consequences and affects almost every character in the show. It's eventually revealed that the soldier who killed the child was actually Envy, a homunculus and one of the series' main evil characters in disguise, with the explicit goal of starting this conflict. Though Envy has a lot of powers, they don't use most of them to do the most effectively evil thing that they do in the entire series. Well, maybe second most evil. The only power they use is their innate ability to transform into another person. This got me thinking, there's a level 1 spell in Dungeons & Dragons that offers the exact same benefit. Disguise Self. It allows the user to cover themselves in an illusion that lets them look like any other person they wish. This is often used by adventurers to infiltrate, investigate, and deceive their way through the world and generally get up to classic D&D hijinks. But remembering the dire consequences of the Ishvalan Civil War to the world of Full Metal Alchemist, it makes me consider that this might be the most impactful first-level spell in Dungeons & Dragons. Disguise Self could be used by villains in your world trying to manufacture war between nations for their own ends. As a DM, you could use this to advance the world state and create big bad evil guys. For example, let's say there's a group of warlocks hell-bent on bringing their patron into the world. But there are 2 nations that have worked together in the past to banish that patron. At just level 2, these warlocks have access to the Eldritch Invocation, Mask of Many Faces, which allows them to cast Disguise Self at will. These warlocks could attack both nations at once using the disguises, or they could infiltrate the capital and assassinate high-ranking leaders or popular figures within the nation, all while using the facade of the other nation. This puts both nations into a prisoner's dilemma of being the first aggressor before they know all the facts. Even if they suspect foul play, if the other nation decides to attack and they don't, they're going to start losing both face and potentially the whole war. Only some truly excellent diplomacy would be able to defuse this situation, and the warlocks would absolutely infiltrate any diplomatic meeting as well as keep sowing chaos in general. Trying to protect a diplomat from these warlocks as they travel to a diplomatic summit is a great hook for an adventure. So, we understand with this how you might use this spell to set up a world conflict or a big bad evil guy. But does this change how you as a player might interact with the world? Because there's other ways to use Disguise Self to absolutely set your world on fire. You could impersonate a noble and take their money out of the bank. You could impersonate a judge and free a criminal or imprison an innocent. You could impersonate a guard and arrest somebody. You could impersonate a servant and poison some tea intended for an important individual. The power to appear to be somebody else has some truly devastating consequences. But if the use of Disguise Self is so dangerous in a fantasy world like that of D&D, wouldn't there be defenses against it? Absolutely there would! Here's where we hit on the world building involved with this idea. And as an aside, that's one of the things I love about cracking into the details, like how a simple spell might affect the world. The deeper you go, the more you realize how any simple thing, like even the spell Continual Flame, might affect your world. The existence of Continual Flame means that there's never going to be a need for light bulbs in the world, unless it can be done cheaper than the 50 gold that the spell consumes. That means if there's technological progress in the space of light, it needs to be done for economic reasons rather than practical ones. So in a world where Disguise Self could result in dangerous scenarios, perhaps in the wake of the disaster like the one with the warlocks, how would a government respond? First, it would be made highly illegal to use illusion magic like Disguise Self. Right off the bat, that creates a whole culture of distrust around those who can use illusion magic, as well as extreme prejudice against creatures like doppelgangers. Next, there would be dispelling magic installed in the doorways of important government locations, rich homes, guard posts. Guards themselves would either have a member of their team who can cast dispel magic, or carry anti-illusion sensors with them to passively dispel disguises wherever they travel. And remember, Disguise Self can be seen through with a successful investigation check, so guards will be on the lookout for people doing anything out of the ordinary or out of character as a reason to prompt that check. They may even have code words or phrases that they share with each other in order to confirm their identities. They could even have trap code words that they give out under duress in case anybody tries to capture them and get the code word from them. Now, this isn't a perfect solution, but it at least makes it far harder for a low-level warlock to sow chaos in a kingdom. That aside, the power in your hands with Disguise Self, especially with the Mask of Many Faces invocation that lets you cast it at will, is immense. This is likely why many DMs would be cautious about allowing doppelgangers as player characters. A character skilled in deception could absolutely change the trajectory of a campaign, basically single-handed. I'll explain using a broken build idea. So, you're going to create a multi-class Warlock Rogue, gaining expertise in Deception, Persuasion, Performance. Then you're going to take the Mask of Many Faces invocation and the Actor feat to gain advantage on Charisma checks where you're pretending to be another person. This essentially makes your character an unquestionable force of lies and charisma, where only someone with true sight would even think to question you. Now, it's not like this build is unbeatable. You can get found out if you do something suspicious or out of character and cause someone to investigate your disguise, but the sheer chaos you can cause with it is undeniable. So both as a player and as a DM, how do you account for this, knowing that it could throw the whole game into chaos? To me, the answer is to talk to each other, player to DM, and lay out some potential story results and consequences for ideas that the player has in the use of this spell. Work together to make scenarios where you can make use of this incredible social power in ways that advance the story rather than throw a wrench in it or grind it to a halt. There are also a lot of fun, low-stakes ways to use this spell if the ramifications seem too much to deal with. You could use it as a way to search for bounties, turning into your quarry and asking locals if they've seen this man. Disguise Self is powerful enough that it could absolutely set a fantasy world on fire, but it's also incredibly cool, and I personally love using and sometimes abusing it, but I don't actually want to ruin a campaign, and I'm sure you don't either, so let's be cool about it, right? But hey, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Just don't come crying to me if you find yourself alone in a throne room with a pissed-off king who is actually a disguised dragon with true sight. If that happens to you, you probably had the incineration coming. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you liked the video, please drop a like and subscribe. I recently launched a Patreon and YouTube membership, and if you join, you can get my supplement called The Codex of Contagion, and that reworks diseases in D&D, how they work narratively and mechanically. My name is Ben DeHart. Or is it? See you